Welcome to Dark Facade, a channel dedicated to looking past the veneer of humanity and finding its true face. I will be your tour guide down this winding path of tales, ranging from the supernatural, science fiction, and twisted love. All the stories you're about to hear are assorted bits of literature that will range from the bizarre to the unexpected. So sit back, lower the lights, and allow yourself to be taken away from everyday reality to its shadowy reflection. If you enjoy our unusual content, please be sure to hit the like and subscribe button to receive more. Thank you. Welcome to Dark.
Bastian and Lucia, Part 7. The woods were quiet when Bastian entered them the next morning. Dominic was gone when he awoke and had not answered his calls when he tried to summon him. Time was of the essence, so he could waste no more of it trying to locate him. Dominic's noticeable absence filled him with dread. He strongly suspected his familiar had abandoned him, not only because he was not answering his calls, but their connection was broken. He could feel it. He felt it to his soul. The pain of it was not unlike losing a dear friend or family member. The death of their magical bond was now a deep sorrow that he could use as a compass to find its source and destroy it. Just ahead of him he saw a path he had not seen before. He and his soldiers had searched these woods countless times, but not once had he come across this dirt road. When his feet touched the soil, there was an intense energy that beckoned him forward. He couldn't explain it, but he knew he had to follow the path to its end. Before the morning turned to midday, he found what he was looking for. Lucia's cottage was just ahead. Bastian watched in the harbor of the tree line as the sanguine emerged from her home. She was dressed commonly, in a brown waist cincher over a white dress. Her dark hair was pinned up, with stray tendrils streaming down against her caramel-colored skin. She was carrying a basket while singing, and being followed by a large gray wolf. The beast skipped about her with all the exuberance of a young pup. She laughed at its antics before pausing long enough to kiss it on its narrow muzzle. "What a character you are," she mused while scratching the wolf behind its ears. The animal whined in affection. As Bastian watched their exchange, an odd feeling came over him. Though he was certain of what she was, and most likely guilty of, he didn't want to harm her. He had no idea why until it occurred to him that she was probably casting a spell over him. After all, blood witches were known for their powers of enchantment. If one were to simply gaze in their eyes, they would surrender their will, and to taste their blood was to lose all freedom. Even though vampires and werewolves were particularly vulnerable to that trap, it was still a danger. He must be careful and keep his wits about him. She was a crafty beauty. He could not lower his guard for a second. When she disappeared with her four-legged companion behind the house, he followed them, still hidden in the tree line. Lucia continued to sing her song as she brushed through the small wooden gate of her garden. One side of it consisted of various vegetables, while the other was healing herbs and plants. Many of the witches and wizards in Alabin had herb gardens like this, but none were quite so charming. As Lucia knelt down to begin the harvest and replant, Bastian watched quietly in the distance. While the wizard continued to observe the sanguine, he noticed how different the light seemed when it shined on her. The rays of the sun were drawn to her. They caressed her skin like a god would touch its beloved creation. Wherever she went, the light followed, and the shadows retreated. The darkness would not touch her. It seemed to abide by an unspoken rule. When Lucia's basket was full and her rows replanted, she stood up to stretch. Bastian softly gasped at the sight of her lifting her graceful arms to the sky while arcing her back. When she let her hair down, he felt himself fall a little deeper into her. Her eyes focused on the creek a few yards away. Her work had left her a little dirty and hot. A dip in the cool stream would feel good. She decided to treat herself and began to undress as she headed towards the water. Bastian knew he should look away, but he couldn't. He didn't want to. He wanted to see her. He wanted to see all of her. As she lowered her white muslin dress to the grass, he marveled at her beautiful slender back. Before she could drop it to the ground completely, the wind shifted, carrying his scent to the nostrils of her gray companion. Navarre jumped to his feet and began to snarl as he stared angrily into the bushes. Lucia pulled her garment back around her as her eyes searched the thicket nervously. Bastian began to panic when he saw her coming closer to the tree line. What was wrong with him? He was there to kill her, wasn't he? Why was he hesitating? When he saw her edging closer to his section of trees, he transported himself out of there and back into his study. He sank down into a nearby chair while trying to slow his breath. Why he had acted this way just now, he could not say for sure, but he suspected she had enchanted him. He would give himself the rest of the day and night to recover, but come the morning he would return and complete his duty as prince and future king of Alban. Even though Bastian was tired, sleep evaded him. He was restless, but why? As he lay there in his bed, willing himself to sleep, Lucia's beautiful face crept into his mind. He relived the moments of her emerging from her cottage and working in her garden. His favorite one, however, was of her bare back and shoulders as she was about to enter the stream. The song she sang haunted him like a far-off dream. He closed his eyes as he let the melody sweep over him. The tune flowed through him as a gentle river, lulling him off to sleep, until Dominic's voice came rushing through like a patch of unexpected rapids. I've been enchanted by the beauty that exists there. Bastian sat up abruptly as his familiar's words dominated his thoughts. The rare and precious beauty he spoke of was the sanguine. She had first only stolen Dominic's concentration, before ultimately stealing him. The wizard's eyes darkened as realization replaced his fascination. She had almost won. She had almost succeeded in seducing him into submission. Well, he was not a mere familiar. He would not be so easily fooled. Let her try to enchant him again. She'd fail. He turned to look out his bedroom window, which overlooked the woods where she was hiding. The evening was beginning to set in. The night was not far behind. He had a job to do, one that was unpleasant but necessary. The Blood Witch had to die. There was no other way around it. She had proven herself to be a danger to their way of life, to their traditions. Countless familiars had fallen under her spell and were plotting against the kingdom. She had stolen their minds and broken their bond. He had to put an end to it. With new determination, Bastian got up from his bed and returned to the woods. By the dawn, Alban would be on the road to recovery, and it would begin with the destruction of the Sanguine. Bastian followed the path that led to her home once again, and was intent on seeing his task through. Alban was counting on him. His father was counting on him. He would succeed. By the time he reached her home, twilight had set in. Firelight glowed softly in the windows as it gently battled the purple darkness. Bastian stood motionless in the tree line again. All he had to do now was go inside and kill her, but he couldn't make his feet move. When it came down to it, Bastian didn't have the stomach for it. He was nothing like his brother, who would have relished the task of ending her life. Bastian took no pleasure in killing. He didn't even enjoy hunting. He believed all life was sacred, even hers, this blood witch who threatened his kingdom's very survival. As he stared into the incandescent light from the windows, he saw her silhouette pass by. His heart skipped a beat, but not in fear. What was wrong with him? Was she casting a spell over him again? How could she, though? How could she do that when she had no idea of his presence? Then it occurred to him that she might in fact be aware of his presence. She may sense him waiting out in the dark, plotting her death. What better way to preserve herself than to cast some sort of love spell? This was not too unbelievable, especially since he suspected she had freed Dominic. His familiar would have told her anything she wanted to know after loosening his tongue with her blood. This must be what was going on. She had cast a spell on him. Luckily, Bastian was a highly skilled wizard. He could counter such magic. He uttered an incantation to rid himself of any spells and protect him against new ones. Confident that he could proceed with what needed to be done, Bastian slowly emerged from the bushes. His trek to the front door was cut short by her gray guardian. Navarre blocked the wizard's path as he snarled in warning. Bastian simply looked deep into the beast's amber eyes and enchanted him. "Go, my wild one, you are free. Return to your untamed roots as lord of the forest, and run beneath the stars. It is your nature to do. Forget this house and the mistress you serve. Be your own master again." Almost immediately after the wizard cast his spell, the wolf ceased his growling and dashed away into the dark. With nothing left between him and his prey, Bastian headed towards Lucia's front door. The time had come, and he had no more excuses. To his utter surprise, the front door opened, sending a flood of light out into the shadow. The illumination stopped short at Bastian's feet. He stood as quiet and still as the trees around him. The Blood Witch cautiously strode down the path of light, her dark hair loose and free about her shoulders. Her brown eyes were squinting in the darkness. She was looking for something, or someone. She confirmed Bastian's suspicions as she called out his name. "Navarre, are you here? Please, come inside," she beckoned. Bastian smiled as a brilliant idea entered his head. What better way to get close enough to kill her than to take on the form of something she trusted? He changed into the gray wolf he had sent away and came trotting towards her, as he had seen the creature do the day before. A smile covered her beautiful face as she stretched her hand out to receive him. He felt her delicate fingers graze his back before lightly cupping his muzzle. She leaned down, then kissed her animal companion with affection. "Come, my friend, sit with me by the fire," she said as she led him inside. Bastian obediently followed, waiting for the perfect moment to strike. Once inside, he stood patiently until he heard her close the door behind them. Her exit was cut off. He could strike now and get it over with. The wolf had powerful jaws that could easily rip her throat out or cut her to pieces. Yet when he stared up at her through the amber eyes of the beast, he couldn't do it. The Blood Witch reached down again, but this time scratched her furry companion behind his ears. Bastian closed his eyes in simple pleasure. A touch such as this would have done nothing for him as a human, but as a wolf, it was sheer ecstasy. He grunted in approval, unable to stop himself, provoking a laugh from her. "Oh, you like that, do you?" she asked playfully. Bastian gave an appropriate response by wagging his tail. "Come on, you silly creature. Come sit with me," Lucia beckoned. He met her dark eyes with a deep affection he could not explain. As the sanguine walked away, he followed her without question or hesitation. Whatever had come over him now could not be explained by any magic or spell, at least not any she could knowingly cast. He was protected from such attacks. Of that he was certain. The power she held over him now came from something much more potent than anything that could be conjured. The truly unbelievable thing was how unaware she was of it. After Lucia took her seat by the hearth, she patted her lap in invitation. She wanted the wolf to lay his head there. Bastian was all too happy to comply. As he rested his chin and the softness of her legs, he closed his eyes as she ran her slender fingers through the thickness of his fur. She then began to sing, which only made the moment even more enchanting. Her voice was as warm and soothing as the fire that crackled in the hearth. The night had completely closed in, but the dark shadows that crept from the corners stopped short from where they were sitting. Just as before, the light touched her and found in her a beacon to shine from. Bastian stared up at her with all the awe of both man and beast. Her song was as beautiful as she was, and though the language was unknown to him, it spoke to his soul all the same. The prince felt himself being carried away with her melody and touch, with her beauty and presence. Yet his desire to put a stop to it was as non-existent as his will to do her harm. He no longer wanted to kill her, at least not now. When her song reached its conclusion, the wolf's eyes popped open. The abrupt silence shattered through his blissful reverie. Like a fist through glass, he looked up into her mild, dark eyes with a question that made her smile. "Did you like my song?" she asked. "It is old, nearly as old as time itself. It was written by the angel Raphael and taught to Merit, the mother of sanguine kind, when she was just a girl. The language is that of celestial beings, and the song was written about the first sunrise." The wizard was truly spellbound now. The sanguine had proven herself to be more than a match for him. He knew he should care. He knew he should try to resist, but he couldn't, nor did he want to. As he met her docile gaze, it became clear to him that he was not going to kill her. He simply could not imagine doing such a thing. Whatever threat she posed to his kingdom seemed unimportant now. The urgency of his mission had disappeared into her enchanting voice and in the tenderness of her caress. As he listened to her softly hum while petting him lightly, he began to get drowsy. The sleep that had evaded him before had at last found him. For some reason, however, he continued to struggle against it. Perhaps his sense of duty was not as far gone as he believed. Lucia put an end to such doubt, however, as she got up from her chair and headed off to bed. As she slipped out of her clothes and into her nightgown, she smiled at her four-legged companion who stood watch outside her bedroom door. "What is your pleasure, my lord?" she mused. "Is it your desire to sleep in or outside tonight?" Bastian stood motionless, waiting for her to invite him in. "I see," she laughed, before pulling the covers back and sliding under them. "Come on, then. We can keep each other warm," she declared while patting the mattress. Without any hesitation, he joined his blood mistress and slept through the night as he never had before.